the 23rd of December 2021. Welcome, everybody. Hope you all doing fine. And this Thursday, 2 days before Madness, also known as Christmas. Agency funding project to monitor online info about Fukushima. The Japan government, around-the-clock monitoring. So if you got nothing to hide, why are they doing stuff like that for, I wonder? TEPCO paid for the creation of a blacklist of actors and musicians who are against the nuclear industry. So did they distribute this out to the nuclear industry after? Most likely. 12 million yen to censor Twitter because they were burning radioactive debris in a community. This is dirty bombs. I'm just going to try to get you to understand, because it's a complicated story tonight. British government deeply involved in blatant conspiracy designed to manipulate the truth about Fukushima. A very effective attempt to calm the reporting of the facts. Leaked emails showed the British government worked with nuclear companies on a public relations campaign to downplay Fukushima, and that the degree of collusion was shocking, truly shocking. New York Times, TEPCO has worked vigilantly to shut out scrutiny of the ravaged nuclear plant's condition. Originally, we couldn't even identify which reactor is which. There was no one there to tell you. France says Japan has lost control. The French leave the country. Like when you're, and the French of all people, when the French tells you to leave the country because of a nuclear accident, you don't even stop to pick up your phone. You just run, baby. With one more quake, Japan will cease to exist, and that the resulting destruction will take half of planet Earth with it. I mean, so like a coal plant, you're not going to see headlines like that, or you're not going to abandon your community if your oil or gas plant breaks down, right? Nuclear is disgusting. No matter how many ways you look at nuclear, you always come to the one conclusion: it's despicable, disgusting, coward industry full of cowards and lawyers. Swiss embassy evacuates Tokyo because of radiation. Radiation around Fukushima nearing levels where humans vomit uncontrollably and your hair can be stripped from the body. And they're shipping food worldwide. They never stop growing it there. I know that sounds impossible, but that's actually what they've done. Continue to do. And of course, the food from Japan is not just Fukushima prefecture right here, or right there. It's all 14 prefectures. 55 countries had it banned, the food from there. That's your coronavirus, by the way, is the cover-up for all the illnesses and diseases, and they're calling it coronavirus. Officials unsure what to do next. Korea appropriately calls Japan's handling of Fukushima incompetent, but it wasn't. It was on purpose. They wanted to poison the world. And the proof of that is that the worldwide media perpetrated incredible crimes against this planet through nuclear. I'll give you a demonstration if I can get my system to give it up. We're in real trouble, and we need people to tell the truth. Telling the truth is a dangerous idea in a age of lies and deceit and deception. This was Reactor 4, and it was supposed to be the same height as this building, 190 feet. And they don't have a repository in Japan or any other country. So they're restoring decades of reactor cores, like the reactor core, like Chernobyl. These are 4 times the size of Chernobyl, 800 tons. But they're pure uranium and pure plutonium. They're completely different. Much more dangerous, much more radiation, isotopes released into the environment. And so the media has come out and pretend that the building doesn't look like that it looks like this. Right? They're pretending it actually doesn't look like that. It's just the damnedest thing I've ever come across in my life.
We are here inside Reactor 4 at the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant that was severely crippled during the earthquake and tsunami of 2011, leading to the country's worst nuclear disaster.
So that's just one of the many medias. All the media in the world, if they didn't go there, they published the pictures and said it was Reactor 4 when it actually looked like that. And so we don't have a media we can turn to. By the way, they've done the same thing with Reactor 3. Tokyo has lost almost all control of the events of Fukushima. It's not Tokyo. It's the nuclear industry. Fukushima will now compare to Chernobyl. 4 nuclear reactors standing on a line are simultaneously spinning out of control. That was 5 days after. And on that day, it looked like this. And to compare it to Chernobyl, is easy. It's way worse than Chernobyl. Chernobyl was brutal. Top Hong Kong newspaper, Fukushima is a global threat. A global response is needed, and that the situation could prove catastrophic for the world. And it did. This is a model of plutonium-239 fallout covering the entire planet, and it's based upon TEPCO's numbers, is what they created the model out of. The slower you spread radiation doses, more effectively produces cancers and illnesses and diseases and autoimmune deficiencies and injuries. And Japan is going the very best way of destroying humanity. Former official in Fukushima, this is a disaster of all humanity, the entire world. Well, you can't, and you'll never hear him mention it, but you can't threaten humanity without threatening the 8 million species that we are supposed to be the stewards of. This could one day be considered the start of the ultimate catastrophe of the world and the planet. Of the world and the planet, because radiation spreads worldwide, the species start disappearing, and you break the food chain, and it takes a few decades, but then you call it climate change, I think. They found plutonium in every sample. It's everywhere. Deteriorating plant threatens a mass extinction around the world. Now, that's not very friendly. Oil plants don't do that. Coal plants don't do that. Gas plants certainly don't do stuff like that. So building a nuclear power plant in your country, if it breaks down, you can kill the planet. So it's not nuclear power, it's a genocide machine, isn't it? A nuclear engineer, I agree Fukushima can be an extinction event. Because he's talking about the radioactive fallout, which, by the way, is global warming. 75 years of hardcore global warming from radiation hemorrhaged into the environment. This model is just based on 20 days. Experts agree many species of wildlife and fisheries are endangered globally due to Fukushima. To your left is a study of the actual radioactive fallout, and to the right is another model. When you're getting 220 million atoms in a liter of radiation, this is unprecedented. This is absurd numbers we're talking about. This is not a game. Human civilization may destroy itself. Michio Kaku, a famous physicist from the United States, liquefaction of 3 reactor cores, nuclear reactor cores. Nobel Prize winner, the only way to preserve human life is to completely turn away from nuclear power. What do you think they're all trying to warn you for? This story here came out this year, and even they talk about nuclear power has the risk of destroying the planet. Major U.S. paper, it's time to quit nuclear power altogether. Threatens the very existence of human civilization as we know it. Tokyo expert, once a nuclear accident occurs, it's over. Zero prospects of ever restoring the contaminated environment. All will be lost. This is the reality of nuclear energy. Leading director in Japan, nuclear power generation is the only invention that may destroy the futures of human beings and by proxy then all the species, right? And those reactors I showed you earlier, it is no exaggeration, says UN Secretary General. It is no exaggeration to say the fate of Japan and the whole world depends on number 4 reactor. Ozawa, we may not be able to live in Japan someday. So if your nuclear power plant breaks down in Canada, we might not be able to live in Canada someday. If your nuclear power breaks down in the United States, we might not be able to live in the United States someday. That's the definition of stupid, to have that on your planet. 1,000 years from now, contaminated water from Fukushima may be still entering the Pacific Ocean. Well, the plumes covered the ocean right away. But French or German models showed 6 years later, after the original, so 2017, the Pacific Ocean would be completely irradiated. But of course, the radioactive fallout done it a lot quicker than that, within a week. 865,000 extra cancers in Japan in 2012. 6 in 10 Fukushima with diabetes. And when you inhale the radiation, it sequesters in your muscles, your organs, and your bones is pulsing energy every second in every direction. And so the exposures increase by a factor of 1 trillion. In Japan, you have an epidemic, an actual epidemic. Pre-Fukushima was 1 to 2 million children with thyroid tumors. Now it's 13,646 out of 40,000, which meant it's 358,000 out of 1 million children when you scale it up. Congenital heart disease operations rose another 14.2% rather, which is 100,000 live births. You need open heart surgery. This is unprecedented numbers we're talking about, all of these. As the public, possibly worldwide, sickens over time because of Fukushima. So if everybody worldwide gets sick from a nuclear meltdown, we call it coronavirus, right? But that's going to be applicable to the animals, and it's not coronavirus, it's radiation sickness. The coronavirus is meant to cover up what the radiation, the lethal doses around the planet are going to do. And they're shipping food out of there to murder us worldwide. They're murdering you worldwide with food from Japan. Japan is being used to exterminate the planet, all species, not just humans. Fukushima is the most serious man-made disaster in human history. Obesity rates now are doubled the Japanese average. An excessive weight gain after a nuclear crisis is a marker of radiation damage, brain damage. Pneumonia cases surged in Japan. The frequency of pneumonia also increased after Chernobyl. 1,500 atoms of radioactive sulfur, peroxide, hydrogen buckyballs per cubic meter were detected in the California air. Another study shown 360 atoms of that sulfur, peroxide, hydrogen buckyballs may have been inhaled by Californians and concentrated in their testicles. It's absurd. It's not just going to be the sulfur, right? I showed you iodines. Nuclear fallout will engulf Taiwan starting April 6. People should stay home or immediately take off their clothes and cleanse the nuclear contaminants. 130 schools in Korea closed because of radioactive fallout. Mass death of species found around Fukushima nuclear plant. They seem to have disappeared. No reproductive success. Surge in babies being born with extra arms and legs after Fukushima. And Fukushima monthly fallout now 10 times higher than last September. And strontium doesn't spike, I think it is for 1,000 days. And then it'll continue for tens of thousands of days. Taipei Times, Taiwan Minister, reports on Japan imports. So there's always this controversy to import food from a nuclear wasteland. And this was Christmas Eve in Taiwan. Would you eat food grown around a nuclear waste like that? Of course not. Would you want that on your store shelves? Of course not. Would you want to be informed if it was? Of course. Food products contaminated by radiation cannot be imported to Taiwan, but no samples of Japanese food have been found to exceed the legal standards, which is an outrageous lie, of course. How can you not exceed the standards? And there is no standards. They artificially, the industry itself created the standards, for goodness sakes. Pre-Fukushima was 0.01 becquerels per kilogram. And now it's 100 becquerels. It used to be 500 becquerels right after the accident. And they moved it back a year later to 100 becquerels a kilogram because everybody was showing up with cancers. Minister of Foreign Affairs said at the legislature in Taiwan yesterday, no food is contaminated in Japan, he says. That's the creature right there. Lawmakers asked if the government will start negotiating with Japan about lifting a ban on food imports from Fukushima and 4 neighboring prefectures after multiple nuclear... Well, it's not just 4. Most of the world had a ban from half of Japan, 14 prefectures. There are only 3% of the land is where they picked up those bags. Any food products contaminated by radiation cannot be imported to Taiwan, but food imports from Japan samples for testing have not been found to exceed the legal standards. Despite the fact they're growing it right by the bags of radiation, despite the fact that they're not talking about this food, because if they were talking about that food, they would say the same thing, I bet you. Food products contaminated by radiation. Entire communities abandoned, and they're growing food all around them. So, for this person to advocate shipping in food from a nuclear wasteland and to blatantly lie about the radiation in the food, they're only checking, and we don't believe they're actually checking anything, but they claim they're checking for gamma. They admit they're not checking for beta or alpha or neutrons. And the question then is, why wouldn't you check for that? And so imagine what kind of despicable, incredibly dangerous creep this person must be to do what he's saying. It boggles the mind, really. Has not been found to exceed the legal standards. Again, this is a constructed reply, right? This is the industry itself. This is a lobbyist reply. There was 150,000 sites like that, and you can't get the food in 55 countries, barred 14 prefectures, half of Japan. So if all these other prefectures are radioactive food, how friggin' bad is it going to be at Fukushima? Come on, let's be reasonable. We're adults, right? Like if you put me in Taiwan and put me in a pedestal and had me debate these people that are claiming that it's innocuous and benign and harmless, there's zero possibility that their arguments can stand up to the truth. It's zero. All you need is one honest person there in the legislature to come out and say, hey, wait a second. You really think that it's good in that Fukushima prefecture when it's banned from all 14 prefectures in 55 countries? You know, it's only your lives at stake. It's only your friends and your families and your children and your country at stake. Nothing important, right? Testing have not been found to exceed legal standards, piece of shit said. The ban should be lifted. No radiation is detected in Japanese food products, the murderer said. It's outrageous. It's outrageous that people like that even exist on our planet. To me, it just doesn't seem real. Can people like that really exist? Can people that cold and heartless and soulless actually exist? Yes, they're actually real. And they gravitated to positions of authority because they're serial killers and they know they can kill millions with the stroke of a pen because they're too cowardly to pick up a knife. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs is not in charge of food products, thank goodness. The government as a whole would monitor food safety, said the piece of shit. There is no safety. There's zero acceptable limits. You're going to get sick if you eat any of it. Separately, yesterday, Chinese Nationalist Party KMT legislator William Tsang, at a meeting of the legislator's economic committee, said that a decision on food imports from Fukushima had already been reached, and that food imports from the area would be allowed from the next quarter. So April. Citing a high-level national security official. High-level national security official that is the nuclear industry, right? Got that job. That's what they do, right? They put people in positions to make these decisions, and then they poison the whole population, and they blame it on kooky shit like coronavirus. Minister of Economic Affairs Wang Mi-hai said that she was unaware of such a decision. Like if you took that guy down here and say, right on all those bags, Dana is wrong, he would claw your eyes or trying to get away. The Deputy Minister of Health and Welfare said that the food with levels of radiation in excess of legal standards would never be allowed on the market. But they actually prosecuted, I can't remember how many importers, but it was a lot for importing incredibly radioactive food. So they caught some, but how many of them got through? Levels of radiation excess of legal standards would never be allowed on the market, said bullshit machine. The ban on Japanese food imports is an inevitable issue for the government, and discussions not yet started, and there is no timetable for them. Why would you import food from a filthy, lying, scumbag country like Japan for? No offense to the Japanese, of course. Hitachi admits to falsifying data on its brake testing. They lie about everything. They're incapable of telling the truth. They actually lie about everything. And falsifying data on brake testing for millions and millions and millions and millions and millions of cars for over a decade, that shows you incredible scumbags, absurd murderers. Has acknowledged it was involved in misconduct dating back 20 years. How many sets of brakes did they ship out in 20 years, I wonder? From a nuclear wasteland on top of that, by the way. Toyota, Nissan, Honda, Subaru. Should anybody trust those vehicles? You'd be stupid to. And 5 kinds of brake products on top of that. In a world where everybody's crazy, telling the truth is a crime. So you can find radiation, some radiation. You're not going to find all of it. You're not going to find plutonium and uranium with that outfit there. I can't either. That's a $1,500 Geiger counter. It's not going to find alpha or beta or neutrons. It's just going to find gamma. Fukushima has not contaminated Japanese food, says a foreign minister. The lowest form of lowest forms. Peaches. Right by radiation. Just because it grows don't mean it's going to be okay or safe. It can't be. It's impossible for it to be. Putting it on the market, and that's indiscriminate poisoning. That's crimes against humanity, by the way. Lawmakers grilled ministers on Japanese food imports, which is nonsense because they've been importing it under different. They ship it to different prefectures, put another label on it, and then ship it to Taiwan. That's exactly what they're doing for every other country too, by the way. More than 10 years, yeah, like most of the radiation going to live for millions of years, you piece of shit. But Taiwan still maintains a ban on the food. Of course they do. You piece of shit. From 5 Japanese prefectures, which is being polite. I can't remember how many millions, tens of millions of bags. And what the claim was, there was no radiation in the bag, no radiation in the bag, no radiation in the bag, no radiation in any of the bags. Grown in a nuclear wasteland. Grown right alongside of these, right around that. Will dictatorial democratic DPP allowed Fukushima food imports to Taiwan for political gain? You can guarantee it. 100%. I'll murder 90% of Taiwan and they'll blame it on coronavirus. They already got a bulletproof cover story. What kind of government would poison its own people? Just to cater to the US and piece of shit Japan, I wonder? The dire fact that Taiwan people have to eat pork with chemicals that are banned in 160 countries and regions in the world, but they won't ban food from a nuclear wasteland in 160 countries and regions in the world is mind-blowing. Right, the nuclear industry is very clever over the last 75 years. They captured your universities, and I mean they captured them. They captured your media, and I do mean they captured your media. They own it, they bought it. They captured key positions in your government and called themselves lobbyists. This is the nuclear industry. Wherever it runs into resistance, it'll capture that in increments, whatever time it takes, and then it'll change the laws to poison everybody. It's a genocidal, ecocidal, mass murdering industry. And that's why we got a poll tonight. Should humanity go to war against the despicable, hateful, cowardly, nuclear-powered omnicide industry? And an omnicide is where you attack everything, every species, including the bacteria, in an attempt to sterilize the entire planet. That's what nuclear ultimately ends up doing. You stop it whenever you can. Like, let's say you get a bad cut on your leg and you end up with gangrene. And you go to the doctor and they're like, oh shit, you got gangrene on your leg. We're going to have to amputate. They're like, no, that's okay. That'll be okay. I'll get some ointment put on it. And they're like, no, that don't work. No, that'll be good. I'll be okay. That's what the nuclear industry does to you every day. I don't understand. Like, in the near future, everybody's going to go get a baseball bat and go looking for anything in the nuclear industry, and they're going to try to exterminate it. That's guaranteed. Even if I don't exist, that's guaranteed to happen. Perhaps what she meant by going global was that the food from nuclear accident-ridden areas in Japan will be the daily meals of the Taiwan people. That's 100%. In a bid to guarantee a ticket for the island, entered a comprehensive, progressive agreement for the Trans-Pacific Partnership, a partnership of genocide. Japan wants the trade pact so they can ship food to your country, right? And many examples of this. When South Korea didn't want their food from the nuclear wasteland itself, Japan took them to the World Trade Organization, aka United Nations, and they said, yeah, you got to take the food, you got to poison the people, you're part of the pack. Eventually they appealed it and ended up winning. But it was a big drama show. And if you want to enter this genocidal Trans-Pacific Partnership, Japan shouldn't be allowed to export anything. Everything that comes out of Japan, if it's on a plane, should be shot down. If it's on the ocean, it should be sank and scuttled. Nothing should be allowed to come out of Japan. Japan is out of control. They've showed nothing but contempt for every human and every species and the future of planet Earth. The nuclear industry included, of course. A disgusting piece of shit nuclear industry. Are nuclear and gas green? No. What do you mean depends if you ask EU or an expert? Are nuclear and gas green? No. The rules are clear. Green economic activity may do no significant harm to the environment, like that, or that, or this, or this. Surging gas prices, which is on purpose, and the reason that they're driving up the price, they're artificially inflating the price of gas, right? You know that. And they're doing it for one reason only, because the EU hasn't voted on whether they're going to accept nuclear as green. Right? So drive the price up, which makes, and then pretend that nuclear is a good option. This, and we cover this all the time, 5 days a week. After week after week, month after month, year after year. And we got, like, we can clearly demonstrate what I'm saying is true. The gas and nuclear should be classified as green in the taxonomy. After multiple delays, because we talk about this a lot, where 2 different times where there were about, like there was a deadline of when the EU was going to declare whether it was green or not. It's not even supposed to be in the conversation. It has 0 attributes to be green. And so they come up with this bizarre connotation of claiming that it's carbon-free. Most carbon-intensive thing on the entire planet. And all the captured media worldwide is out there screeching is carbon-free, trying to brainwash the populations, when it's the handful of people at the EU will make that decision, a handful. There's no referendum. It's a handful of people that are appointed, not elected, by the way, that'll make that decision. And if they can pull that, now Canada has already done it. Last week, Bruce Power spent $500 million on green stocks for nuclear. Never seen it coming either. I didn't know they were able to do that until last week when I seen they actually done it. It does show you this incredible disconnect in humans that do stuff like this. Because the harm they're causing by doing it is forever. And it's for all species, not just their country. It's for all species, all humans worldwide. It's an incredible betrayal because by 2026, there'll be around 5,500 nuclear power plants where the renewable energy is online, which displaces all nuclear, displaces all fossil fuel energy on the planet in just 4 years, 5 years. So in 10 years, we'll be triple that. Because you know our technology doubles every 18 months or so, right? So in 10 years, we'll actually be triple the energy that we need for the planet to use with renewables. And so nuclear is slash and burn. It's gone into drowning man mode now where anybody tries to save them as they're drowning, they'll drown them too, right? And they'll drown everything on the planet with radiation in the next 5 years. They're at their most dangerous now. They're out of control. They have nothing to lose. And they want to take the planet with them anyway. They hate us. They hate life. Investors have said political compromise and the inclusion of nuclear and gas puts the whole world at risk because it diminishes the scientific credibility, which it does, of course. Like, if nuclear wasn't goblins, the people in the nuclear industry weren't goblins, they would be lined up volunteers to go to Fukushima and give the homeless and destitute and the victims and immigrants the day off, right? There's never been a nuclear scientist that went to Fukushima. A few have claimed they have, but none of them actually did. When you banned food, and 55 countries did from 14 prefectures, how bad is it at the one that started it all, at ground zero? It's frightening. The inclusion of nuclear and gas puts the whole project at risk because it diminishes the scientific credibility. Well, it is. It was the first 30 headlines I showed you nuclear is not green or clean or carbon free or anything else. That is nothing but a genocide machine for the whole planet. The taxonomy was set up as a science-based classification system. It was never meant to be a battleground for the scumbags in the nuclear industry, which is what they turned it into because they control most of the media worldwide, if not all of it. As stipulated in the taxonomy, a green economic activity may do no significant harm to the environment and the protection of the biodiversity or any of the other goals outlined in the agreement, which is exactly what nuclear does. It destroys everything and everybody's future and every species. On Tuesday, a group of commissions, experts, petitions the MEP not to include nuclear. The risk of a severe nuclear accident cannot be excluded. It's inevitable. The buildings become brittle. You have an earthquake, they're very high pressure, 1,000 to 2,000 psi. If you get brittle, and you do because of neutron bombardment, known as the Wigner effect, and you get a split into 1,000 psi vessel, it pops. You've seen a car tire. Go look up videos of car tires explode because people put too much air into them at 35, 40, 50 psi. Imagine 1,000 psi. 60 plus atmospheric pressures. It's madness to think about it. Nuclear is notoriously expensive, with production costs often far exceeding predictions, always exceeding predictions. The only two plants in Europe currently in active development, Finnish Kukuluto 3, which just started powering up today, 12 years late. And the French Flamanville 3 were supposed to come online in 2009, 2012. This is 2000, almost 22 now. Neither are operational and triple the anticipated cost. That's a really revolting thing they do, isn't it? Where they tell you it's going, $10 million, $10 billion, and $30 billion later, well, it's almost finished. Czech support for nuclear rises in energy crisis. The energy crisis is artificially created because the EU didn't vote like they were supposed to last year, right? Or earlier this year, I should say. Support for nuclear energy has jumped 65% in the Czech Republic, says scumbags. Well, nobody can accuse them of being smart, obviously. It's not carbon-free. It's incapable of being carbon-free. It's a genocide machine. And speaking of genocide machines, the International Atomic Energy Agency are not regulatory agencies. They're promoters. Unbelievable scumbags. Incredible scumbags. Hideous, monstrous scumbags, these people. Revolting, despicable, murderous scumbags. They've never ever done anything for this planet, only destroy it. For 25 years, the scumbags have been providing shit advice to countries. The IAEA's International Physical Protection Advisory Service. Physical protection. Do they have that for the coal plants? No. Do they have international atomic energy agencies for oil plants? No. For gas plants? No. They're revolting dinosaurs is what these people are. And you got to be a dinosaur to get a job with it. Small modular reactors target 2030. We'll have twice the energy the entire planet uses in 2030 from renewables. It's going to just, in 5 years' time, we'll surpass all nuclear and all coal or oil and gas plants on the planet, all fossil fuels on the planet. Here's another fable, fantasy depiction, claiming that's going to be the small modular reactors in 2030. Oh, I can put it on a truck and take it down the road, Dana. Listen, if you believe anything the nuclear industry tells you, you're actually incompetent. If you went to university, you should get your money back. There are upwards of 70 small modular reactor designs under investigation in 17 countries. According to the degenerate, demonic International Atomic Energy Agency, piece of shit agency. The world needs commercial rollout if these reactor designs are to make a useful contribution to our future zero carbon electricity mix. Zero carbon, net zero, global warming, climate change, carbon footprint. Sound familiar? In Canada, Global First Power has applied for a license to prepare a site for a little shit 15 megawatt micro modular reactor at no other place than Chalk River, where the world's first nuclear meltdown is still melting down in a China syndrome. Where just a couple of days ago, the media was out claiming Jimmy Carter seen the reactor melting down and said, "Lower me down into the reactor. Give me a wrench, I'll fix it." I covered that story yesterday, right? Lower! Come on, keep going, get me down there. I gotta get a bolt off this melting nuclear reactor and stop the meltdown. Every day I'm going around, like I got no hair left because I'm pulling it out all freaking day. UK updated its third-party liability laws for the first time since 1960. Oh, there was one strange thing there. I'll show you. Operators of nuclear sites in the UK, including those responsible for disposing of nuclear matter. First off, they never disposed of anything. You know, they dump it in the ocean and release it into the environment, stuff like that. But they spent the first 20 years just putting it on ships, bringing it out to sea and throwing it overboard. All of them should be lined up and shot. If they're dead and buried, they should be dug up and then shot. In the UK that done that. You piece of shit. You despicable piece of shit in the United Kingdom. In the nuclear industry. Should review their insurance and contractual arrangements to ensure they align with a new liability regime that takes effect on the 1st of January 2022. And they picked up a lot of Luxembourg affected last year, where you can sue the nuclear power plant that poisoned you up to 30 years later. The Act makes provision for compensation to be claimed from personal injuries or property damage, but there's, of course, 700 million euros or pounds or sterlings in damages a year. Of course, Fukushima is going to be $1 trillion accident. So 1.2 billion over a period of 5 years. Which is, in other words, get lost. You're not getting it, and only corporations are going to get that money. Limited periods are also amended. The right to claim compensation for personal injury will be extended from 10 years to 30 years. The time limit on bringing claims of all other kinds is fixed at 10 years. But if it's a personal, like cancer, or leukemia, or Alzheimer's, or dementia, or autism, or heart problems, or liver, or lung, or respiratory, pituitary, or thyroid, or adrenaline, you can go F yourself. They ain't gonna give you jack shit. Represents the most significant revision of the nuclear third-party liability regime. There's a proper name for it, by the way. Since it was first introduced in the 1960s. Should Fukushima get a law like that too? If they're shipping food out, the ship should be sunk. If they're flying it out, the plane should be shot out of the sky. We should have armies from all over the world surround Japan. Every time they try to ship something out of there, it should be sunk or shot out of the sky. Poisoning an entire planet where my brain sits is a crime. If I poison you, if you come to my house and I poison you, that's a crime, right? But if you go to Japanese and you take Japanese food and you feed it to your loved ones and they die, you're a hero, according to the nuclear industry. Epic undertaking to remove steam generators from Bruce Power nuclear plant. They're updating 13 years, updating reactors that are incredibly brittle, are pounded with neutrons for 40 odd years. And that by the time they actually get it finished, renewables and different renewables will take over the grid. This is the power of nuclear industry. As soon as Fukushima melted down, Pickerton and Darlington in Canada nuclear power sites got $12 to $13 billion each immediately. Bruce Power's 13-year, $13 billion nuclear refurbishment project. Every Canadian will hang their head in shame soon. The first 8 of 48 steam generators to be removed and reinstalled have been lifted into place. 60 feet long and 320,000 pounds of precious metals that'll be radioactive as crap real soon. China conducts a nuclear fusion experiment for an artificial sun. Again, if they took this people and brain power and monetary and energy and momentum and come up with solutions, right, for energy conservation and for renewables, they would have solved this a long time ago. Not fusion. We won't need fusion. China's preparing to restart a stalled domestic nuclear reactor program after a 3-year moratorium on new approvals. The country is a member of 35-nation Inter project, a $11 billion U.S. fusion project under construction in France. It's supposed to be like $3 billion originally, wasn't it? In France. And of course, if you look at France's legacy, it's humiliating. That's a country that should be dissolved and split up, or at least hold them accountable for what they've been doing. I mean, what they've done to Algeria, what they've done to Niger for the last 60-odd years, they destroyed the entire countries with the civil war so they can get their hands on cheap uranium for dirty reactors. And 70% of their fresh water they need it for the despicable nuclear industry. Production of components that can withstand temperatures of 100 million degrees. 180 million degrees Fahrenheit, by the way. We don't even have anything that can hold a 9,000 degree Fahrenheit temperatures like the melted reactor cores headed to China right now from Fukushima. It's a figure of speech, by the way. The China syndrome is just a pun on words. So they got to crack problems they can't crack. They got 50 years in, they still can't crack it. But they could have come up with renewable solutions in that period 500 times over. They could have cracked every one of them. Instead, they choose to take all the smartest people they can find and waste them on this one. It's humiliating. If you asked anybody in the nuclear industry and they came to your house and you said, well, what are we going to be eating? You say, well, I got this food shipped in from right here. They'd literally wouldn't even open your door. They'd run right through it trying to get out of your house. They're not stupid. They're murderers. Dismantling of the Marcoule reprocessing cell is approaching. This is the World Nuclear News. Of course, they'd never, ever put their name on a single article. They're an actual nuclear lobbyist is all they really are. And they're revolting. They're actually despicable. Used fuel reprocessing plant facility. They're actually out there bragging about a used fuel reprocessing facility that they're somebody's dismantling with a robot. It took 10 years to build a robot. 10 years. Who knows how many billions of dollars that one cost. Experts warn about Taiwan's dangerous intention to develop nuclear weapons. Stress preparation for the worst. So Taiwan wants to apparently create their own nuclear weapons as a deterrent to China, who don't give a shit about nuclear weapons because they got tons of them. She does not believe that the Chinese government will ever allow the island to obtain the bomb. After years of doubt, hope grows that nuclear fusion is finally for real and could help address the climate change. And I apologize because every time I hear the words going to help address climate change, it's a 100% hoax, 100% propaganda meant to prop up an industry and bankrupt the country and disarm you from coming up with real solutions. Right? That's one of the worst things about it. You hear, well, I can't compete with nuclear fusion, Dana. What's the sense of trying? Well, first off, it's not even real. It's just a bunch of rich government and industry's children gets the job, see? And then they give you this depiction where they're stood up right alongside a reactor that will never exist, no doubt. And they're there with their... It's just so stupid. It's the stupidest picture imaginable. It's been compared to everything from a holy grail to fool's gold. The ultimate solution to clean, readily available energy or an expensive delusion, diverting scarce money and brain power from the urgent need of rapidly addressing climate change. Well, nuclear is climate change. An expensive delusion, yeah. In theory, fusion could yield inexpensive, unlimited, zero-emission electricity without producing any significant radioactive waste, you say? Well, like the 60 million one-ton bags in Japan? Scottish C&D slams fusion reactors attempt to keep the industry alive. If they are ever introduced, fusion reactors would routinely release radiation into the atmosphere via the cooling water for the reactors, which would contaminate all areas downwind and downstream. In addition, were an explosion or fire ever to hit the plant, the radioactive releases would constitute a nuclear disaster. Fusion reactors would also be subject to most of the major problems associated with fission reactors, including large-scale cooling demands, high construction operation costs, lengthy construction times, stretching into decades. The structure damaged by neutron bombardment will need to be replaced regularly, resulting in large amounts of radioactive waste for which there is no current solution in the UK. It's an industry that's in trouble and has a very powerful lobby group. It is folly to pin our hopes for decarbonizing the energy system on technology that's not available or likely to ever be available. Get your radioactive peaches and rice. Oh, so Finland plant unit starts up. It takes forever to get these things to their actual producing power. The moment will be remembered forever as a sign of the hard work to put our new plant unit in operation. It speaks of the strong professionalism in the nuke tard industry. Construction began in 2005 and completion the reactor was originally scheduled for 2009. You got nothing to be proud of. 10 years behind schedule and significantly over budget. Get your Japanese food. Nuclear saltwater rocket. Is it the only viable way to get to another planet? Saltwater rockets. Oh, guess who? That's Robert Zubrin. Zubrin. I called him out there. It was the last week or the week before. Despicable piece of shit. Bob's a despicable sack of shit. He'll murder everybody to get somebody to go up and sit on Mars so he can say, see, tell ya. With an exhaust velocity of 60,000 meters a second versus 4,500 meters a second for today's commercial rockets. It's good, but it's still not enough to reach other galaxies. Look, you gotta just come up with solutions for this planet before you think about going out there and destroying another planet. The worst of the worst of the worst is all we seem to have on this planet. The techniques could not be used in initial launch from Earth as its radioactive exhaust would contaminate our precious planet. So the radioactive exhaust on Robert's Zubrim, and he's in all kinds of documentaries and all kinds of interviews, and he's a pervert lawyer. He's a professional degenerate lawyer. Since the engine is used for acceleration, how would it decelerate in space? Details, details, details. By embracing nuclear power, U.S. can lead on clean energy. Your temperature, and they put this stupid, ridiculous cartoon in there. Your temperature's still rising, but don't worry, that's just your body's way of killing an infection. You're pro-nuclear, go down there and tell the victims how wonderful nuclear is. Go down there and write on each of those bags, Dana is wrong. While the urgency and daily impacts of climate change are increasingly understood by the hoodwinked public, we need to reposition nuclear energy to the forefront in our uphill battle against climate change. As Americans, we're all owners of our nation's public land, and we need to seriously consider whether a future of millions of acres of solar and wind is worth the impact on wildlife and wildlife habitat. Millions of acres of wind and solar, which is 1 million acres would be 1,500 square miles. If you look up this study on Bikini Atolls that the Americans done, radioactive fallout from nuclear testing contaminated over 1 million square kilometers. 1 million square kilometers. You got Hanford down at 580 square kilometers, or miles, I should say. And that's contaminated all the rivers and estuaries and lakes and streams. 1 million square kilometers just from nuclear testing in one spot. He also goes on to say the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services estimate 500,000 migratory birds are killed by the wind turbines each year, versus no birds in Japan left anymore. Almost no birds have died in collisions with wind turbine blades. Research finds, you piece of shit scumbag, you. He says the intermittent availability of wind and solar cannot possibly keep up with the energy crowd on their own. They can't come up with enough black plastic material to fill up anymore. There's 60 million nuclear bags of radiation, 1-ton bags of radiation there. Renewable energy saw a record year of growth. So 290 gigawatts this year of renewable energy is equal to 333 nuclear power plants in 12 months. Can you build 333 nuclear power plants in 12 months? I don't think so. And they expect the renewable energy generating capacity to overtake the fossil fuel and nuclear energy combined by 2026. Oh, and if you use pumped hydro, I know it's complicated. You got to pump water up a hill. When there's no wind or sunshine, the water comes down the hill. You do that with excess energy, right? And it's the same thing with compressed air. Startup pumps compressed air. So excess energy, you have mine shafts, you pump low pressure air, 120 psi down there. So you have pumped hydro and compressed air storage. That'll solve the storage and the intermittency. And they're all out there pretending it doesn't exist. We've covered this 1,000 times in the last decade, I'm sure. Will it make any practical difference if scientists finally crack the nuclear fusion nut? No, because you poisoned the planet. and you never even tried to stop it, you self-centered, arrogant, hubris pricks. Gina, a nuclear plant in Wayne County, part of a new company. Sort of. So the plant generates enough energy for 2.6 million average size homes. There's Gina, Non-Mile, Fitzpatrick, and another one, 9 Mile too. They produce altogether enough energy for 2.6 million average size homes by splitting the atom. And when you take that out of the reactor after 18 months because they're brittle, for the next million years they're still splitting the atom for 2.6 million homes. Those atoms are released into the environment as an invisible snowstorm all day, every day. The more you add, the more bigger the snowstorm is every single day. So imagine going out every day and getting 10 elephants and bringing them home. Each day you go out and get another 10 elephants, you bring them home. And you do that for 100 years. Every day for 100 years, you go out and get 10 elephants and bring them home. You got a lot of elephants, right, in your home now, don't you? But that's the same thing as nuclear does, where every day it's releasing an invisible snowstorm worldwide from over 1,000 fuel pools of radiation plumes. And that plume will, if it all stopped right there, that one day, that's a plume covering the whole planet, pulsing energy every second. But the next day, it's going to create another plume exactly like that plume. It's also going to be pulsing energy every second. The next day, the 1,000 fuel pools worldwide are going to release another massive plume covering the planet every day until there's no species left. And then if you have an accident in any of these hideous, despicable, monstrous facilities, you radiate the entire planet till the very end of time. Belgium to shut down all of its nuclear reactors by 2025 and invest in a nuclear technology that doesn't even exist. And by 2026, renewables will have replaced all nuclear reactors on the planet in capacity, plus all fossil fuel plants. So it's going to take them 10, 15 years to build the infrastructure, and by 2026, the infrastructure will be obsolete. By 2030, it's definitely going to be obsolete because technology doubles so quick. It's been 2 years. What's up with the San Onofre nuclear plant? San Onofre nuclear plant is going to create 1 billion pounds of nuclear waste. Hasn't produced electricity for 9 years. It's expected to take roughly 8 years. Yeah? Typically it takes 60 to 100. And it's going to cost 4.5 billion. Wow. Just over 1 billion pounds of equipment, components, rebar, cement, steel, titanium, all the most precious metals they can get their hands on when they built it, will be removed from the site upon completion, and about 80% is considered radioactive. 800 million pounds or more of radiation. Multiply that by 440 nuclear plants worldwide. Russia upgrades its nuclear forces to deter America. Right, gotta have a boogeyman to keep the endless misery idiot machine going. You can't use the weapons against each other because you can't cash any more checks once you do that. Can't take any more bribes once you do that. Go down to Japan and eat lots of food. If you're pro-nuclear, go down to Japan, eat all the local food. In fact, go down to Fukushima Prefecture and eat all that food. It can't hurt you. If you're pro-nuclear, go down to Japan and eat all the food you want. It can't actually hurt you. Make sure to bring your children. Give them lots of Fukushima product because it can't hurt them. They're pro-nuclear. they are the pro-nuclear. Looks like I'm censored heavy again tonight. Yeah. It is what it is, right? Well, this week was a bit strange week because we just mostly covered nuclear, the daily nuclear cycle. And I don't know, I covered 300, 400 headlines from the daily nuclear news from this week. And what you're seeing is 100 or 99.9% was the pro-nuclear community full of lies. Very frustrating, it's very upsetting, because we're going to lose the planet, and there's no reason to. And all they do is they don't have a debate, they just tell lies. They just pump out lie after lie all day long. And I have to read all that. I can't possibly cover it in every show. I have to read everything. And sometimes I get frustrated because I see this omnicide exterminating everything on the planet in increments over a short period of time. And we've done the research to back up those assertions, by the way. And if you don't get upset about it, you're not human. If you're not frustrated, you're not human. If you're not, if you don't want to fight back, you're not actually, you haven't broken free of the chains that have bound you that they created. And I just figured, well, that's my last show before Christmas. I'm going to stomp, snort, stomp the industry. Because I don't take breaks. I give people breaks by not doing a show, but I don't take breaks. I go right back to work as soon as this is over. I ain't going to live forever, so I might as well come out and beat the shit out of this industry as much as I can. And make no mistakes, this industry will murder everything on the planet on a drop of a hat. It's ready to murder everything on a drop of a hat. The industry will go around and detonate every nuclear power plant on the planet and kill everything on the planet if they thought that's what the rest of them were going to do. They happily run down to the local nuclear plant and blow it up so they can kill everything. It's a death cult. It's a secret society, a despicable society. It's a gross, hateful society, and they're a death cult. And they're cowards. Which is why we got a poll tonight that I'm about to end. Should humanity go to war against the piece of shit nuclear power omnicide industry? We got an overwhelming 38 votes. 95% says F them. I agree. That's all I can do is agree. I've never made it no secret that I hate this industry. It's hard to wrap your mind around how much I hate this industry, but I like to think there's nobody on the planet that hates nuclear more than I do. I've been covering them for so long, I got no illusions about how evil they are. I got no illusions about how dangerous they are. And I can back up all of my assertions on the drop of a hat. Well, I knew that time was coming. Colette, yes, have a great weekend if that's possible, folks. Hi, Colette, William, Peaceware, James Lucid. The virus is the scapegoat. Poor virus. He's trying to be funny, folks. He's not serious. Port Angeles. Mike Mansfield. Good night, everybody. Andrew B. 239 Joint, which is Joe Moore. Good night, Joe. Have a great weekend, everybody. Nancy, Katja, Ella, I only serve one king. Lori, Shayla White. Lots of people made it for the last show before Christmas, I see. It's pretty awesome. What the hell was that? Atomic Guinea Pig. It's a great name. Okay, well, good night, everybody. I'm pretty burnt out. What a long day this was to put all this together, believe it or not. Danny San, hard to find the stories today. Frederick, Randolph, David Allen, Texas, Annie, Thomas, Zorine, I got no idea. David Holly in UK. EZ. Victor. Merry Christmas, Victor. Chad. Everybody. In that poll here, I guess. 39 votes, 95% said humanity should go to war against the nuclear industry. Just remember, right? The media worldwide fake being in a building that don't exist, a melted reactor that does no longer exist. Yeah. Good night, Lori. Thank you. Have a great holiday, everybody. I don't know what the hell am I going to do. I don't know how to take time off. SCH. Katja. Yeah. Good night, everybody. I have a very small pension that I live on, so I'm not going on any vacations or nothing. Got a big phone bill this month from taking calls from people worldwide. I'm probably going to give up the long distance and the phone part. It's too much of a burden on me and everybody else. Have a great night. We'll see everybody. I'm not sure when. Sunday is Boxing Day. I might not show up until New Year's Eve. There's a possibility. I'd love to take a week off, but I'm afraid what the nuclear industry will do in a week. We'll see. It's pretty amazing that on Christmas Eve, Taiwan was talking about importing food from a nuclear wasteland. On Christmas Eve. On Christmas Eve. Yeah, good night, Ella. Mike, P. Answer, David Holly. Anybody I missed? My apology. I always seem to miss a few people. Have a great night, a great day tomorrow, a great weekend. We'll see everybody soon. Another couple of days, it'll be over, and you can get your life back to normal. Do the best you can. God bless. Have a great night, everyone.
nicht viel.